Good evening and welcome to the Monday, March 22nd, 2021 meeting of the Hillsborough Township Board of Education. In accordance with the State Sunshine Law of New Jersey, adequate notice of this meeting of the Hillsborough Township Board of Education was provided on March 18th, 2021 to the Hillsborough Beacon and the Courier News. Ms. San Giuliano, may we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Mr. Gillette?
Here.
Mr. Marini?
Here.
Ms. Maroon?
Here.
Ms. Nurse?
Here.
Mr. Oliver?
Here.
Mr. Pulsifer?
Here.
Ms. Stats?
Here.
And Ms. Trujillo?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. And now actually, so we have a motion to move into executive session, whereas the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231 of the laws of 1975 provides that a public body may exclude the public from that portion of a meeting of which the public body discusses certain matters for which confidentiality is required as permitted by Section 7B of the Act, resolved by the Board of Education of the Township of Hillsborough and the County of Somerset and the State of New Jersey as follows. The matters to be discussed are a negotiations matter between the Hillsborough Education Association and the Hillsborough Principals and Supervisors Association. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Pulsifer, and thank you, Mr. Marini. Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. We will be in executive session and we expect to return back to public session approximately 20 to 30 minutes. Welcome back. We're back from executive session. Ms. San Giuliano, may we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Mr. Gillette?
Here.
Mr. Marini?
Here.
Ms. Maroon?
Here.
Ms. Nurse?
Here.
Mr. Oliver?
Here.
Mr. Pulsifer? Ms. Stats?
Here.
And Ms. Trujillo?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. May we now please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge the correspondence that we received as listed. And I'd also like to say to the fellow board members that I have responded to all of the public correspondence received through Sunday. I did not respond to the ones that we received today. And now I'd like to turn it over to the superintendent for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Ms. Trujillo. The first thing, I have lots of things to share today, but what we'd like to do first is the 2021-2022 tentative budget presentation, and then allow for the board to provide input. And let me bring that up. Okay. So as the board knows, we've been working on this budget for quite a while. We start the budget in October. Mr. Mahmood, Mrs. San Giuliano, all of the budget managers begin working in October. We also begin our public input at that time. And then the budget managers work on the budget from October through December, at which time Mr. Mahmood and Mrs. San Giuliano review the budgets and meet with the budget managers. And then we get together and we do a full budget review with me and each of the board members. We go to committees, we see where we are, what the board goals are, what the board priorities are. And then we meet with each of the committees to review the budget, to review the state aid allocations, to look at the budget software and determine how to move forward. By March, which is where we are now, each of the board committees has reviewed the draft tentative budget. And then this evening is when we hopefully pass the tentative budget to move forward. Between the tentative budget and the final budget that will take place at the end of April, we can still make adjustments to the budget. So this is not set in stone. It's just we're mandated to approve this tentative budget. So our opening thoughts are, of course, that we want to thank the board and the budget managers for being able to present a balanced and responsible budget. Of course, the HEA and HPSA for assisting us in realizing savings whilst continuing to provide quality healthcare to all of our staff members. And as I said, while this is a tentative budget, we may modify the budget based upon board committee meetings, community input, right up until budget approval at the end of April. The budget resolutions on tonight's agenda include the tentative budget approval, travel maximum expenditures, and withdrawal from cap reserve and maintenance reserve. And they are requirements from the executive county superintendent. So when we move all of those items, it's because we move them together as part of the tentative budget. Some of the budget goals we looked at for 2021, 2022, while anticipating an increase in the reduction of state aid, which wasn't as much as what we thought it would be, were to maintain current programs and, of course, all positions. We didn't want to have to eliminate any position, minimize any significant appropriation reductions for each of the budget managers, and obviously provide a thorough and efficient education for all students. We wanted to maintain or improve class sizes and utilize reserves where it was possible for us to do that. Our district enrollment, as per the AASA, which is our sort of our official accounting of enrollment numbers on October 15th, you're going to see a difference of about 190 students. Now, we know exactly who those students are and where they went. We know if they went to a private school because we were closed due to COVID, we were all virtual. We know if they went out of state. We know if they disenrolled and are going to a completely different school district. We also believe that as we start reopening schools, which we've already seen some of this, we're going to see many of these students come back to us. And so it was important for us to show the differences between October 15, 2019 pre-COVID and October 15, 2020 after COVID. And while some of these disenrollments were due to moves out of state or to a different school district, many of them were due to other reasons like homeschooling, private schools, and things like that, as I explained. So we believe that we're going to see an increase in the number of students attending Hillsborough as we continue to reopen schools. Ms. Sangiuliano?
Sure. So for the 2021-2022 budget, as shown in the chart, we have a general fund, or our Fund 10, of approximately $131.8 million, a difference of $1.3 million from the prior year. For our grants and entitlements, or Fund 20, we have an appropriation of approximately $1.8 million, or a difference of $87,000. And for our debt service Fund 40, we have a number of approximately $2.8 million, a difference of approximately $141,000, for a total in our 2021-2022 budget of $136 million, for a difference of $1.6 million from the prior year. When we look at our budget highlights for the revenue, we worked with our tax levy to increase that by the 2% cap. The district is unable to take any waivers this year to go above cap, as in the past you may have seen resolutions for the health benefits adjustment or the enrollment adjustment, which allowed us to go above our 2% tax levy. We had a reduction in state aid, as Dr. Antunes mentioned, of approximately $694,000. Our originally projected reduction in state aid for next budget year was $1.3 million. However, thankfully, we received a smaller reduction than we anticipated, so our reduction was only $694,000. We have a withdrawal from maintenance reserve of $500,000 built into the budget. We also have a withdrawal from capital reserve of $600,000, also built in the budget, specifically earmarked for the HES paving and roof projects. In addition, we do not anticipate our pay-to-play fees or building usage fees to increase. And we also do not anticipate our technology Chromebook insurance or our summer rentals to increase. Our main budget drivers, we have salary and benefits, as you've heard us mention years before, that makes up a large portion of our budget, approximately 75% of our general fund budget, or our Fund 10 budget. Transportation makes up approximately 6% of our general fund budget. Buildings and grounds is approximately 4% of our general fund budget, and special education is approximately 3% of our general fund budget. Our budget highlights on the expenditure side. As previously mentioned, we were able to realize extensive savings while ensuring quality healthcare due to the transition to the SEHBP. All of our programs will remain intact and there are no recommended staff reductions. We will be adding 4 teaching positions. We will be adding a community outreach coordinator. And we will also be adding special education positions, which includes 4 full-time teachers and 3 instructional assistants based on our IEP mandates and district needs. We will be sufficiently supporting the curriculum revision and the resource update for science. We have accounted for a portion of breakage that we expect to realize. We have an additional expenditure budgeted for our COVID-related personal protective equipment and our sanitizing supplies. As previously mentioned on the revenue side, where we are withdrawing from capital reserve, we also built in a lease payment, so it's year 1 of 5 lease payment for our HES paving and roof replacement expenditures. And we also plan to purchase 4 new buses for a net savings. For the tax impact, focusing on Hillsborough first, and this is for a house assessed at the same value as it was last year. Our 2021 school tax rate is 1.56. This is a decrease from our 2020 school tax rate at 1.58. The average household of $426,000 will see a tax decrease for school taxes only of $120 per year or $10 per month. For the 3rd year in a row, and we're very happy about this, school taxes for Hillsborough Township residents have gone down. The Millstone school tax rate, 2021 school tax rate is 1.229. This is a decrease from our 2020 school tax rate, which was 1.568. So for an average household in Millstone of $339,000, they will see a tax decrease for school taxes only of $1,151 per year or $96 per month. It's important to note that this does include the tax impact for our debt service from the recent referendum from December 10th, 2019. So as a reminder, our 2021-2022 school year is the 1 year of overlap of our old debt and our new debt. Starting in 2022 and 2023 through 2041, the tax impact from debt service will only be based on the new debt. I believe it's back to Dr. Antunes.
Yes, thank you. And so what are our next steps? So the business office submits the tentative budget to the executive county superintendent for review and approval. We'll do that as long as the board affirms the recommendation. That will go tomorrow. We'll submit that and be on our way. The board will continue to work in committees to refine the budget before the final budget here on April 26th, which we'll have publicly. And we continue to encourage the public to provide feedback on the community input link on our website or at a board meeting. Again, it's important to reiterate that due to the significant savings from the transition to the SEHBP, which is the State Health Benefits Program, we were able to sustain programs and positions. And next year, we are anticipating a state aid reduction of 1.2 million. So we'll already start working on that after this budget gets moved forward. We will continue to work with our legislators to try to receive additional state aid or a decrease in our reduction. And thank you. And I know, Ms. Trujillo, that you wanted to allow the board to, if they had any comments, or to open it up to the public for this portion of the agenda before we move everything up.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Antunes and Ms. Sangiuliano, for that excellent presentation on the tentative budget. To the fellow board members, do you have any questions or comments? Ms. Stats, please.
Well, I also want to thank everyone for creating this tentative budget and for the presentations by Ms. Sangiuliano and Dr. Antunes. But I am particularly ecstatic about the 4 additional teachers on top of the additional teachers in the special ed program. Especially when we lost so many people a couple years ago. This is, again, I can't, maybe my tone isn't expressing it, but I'm really, really happy about that. So thank you for making that happen.
Thank you.
Mr. Pulsifer. We can't hear.
Mr. Pulsifer, we can't hear you. No.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. The wonder of technology. Just to clarify, if we could, I'm wondering for the this we talk about savings for the switching to the school employees health benefits program. Are we actually paying less total in premiums for the year, or are we just saving against what we thought we would pay for this year? I'm not sure if that question is clear.
No, we are saving in total from where we're currently at. It's less moving into next year.
Good. That's good news. I was afraid it wasn't. My other question, and I guess it's more about looking forward. I would have to imagine that given the climate and the economy in the state for the last year, that the tax revenue for the state was significantly down. Did we have any feeling or idea as to how that might impact us, not so much in this coming year, but as we move forward, and how we should plan in case the future cuts are harsher? Instead, this year the cut wasn't as bad as we expected. My concern is that with at least in my expectation, that tax revenue for the state will be way down, that they will cut more instead of lessening the cut for the following school year. Do we have any ideas? And have we started thinking about contingencies as we roll forward as to how to prepare for that potential eventuality?
So we have not received any guidance or information from the state that we will receive additional reductions or anything along those lines. I know towards the end of last year, we were kind of getting guidance as we were starting to build the 21-22. However, thankfully, no additional money was taken from Hillsborough. We are also utilizing our reserves that we currently have, maintenance and capital reserve, and are thankful that we were able to deposit into both of them following our 1920 audit. And then we will continually talk with, I believe we will be appointing new auditors as our prior auditor retired. So we will be talking with our new auditors starting this summer to see if there's any additional reserves that we can also utilize for emergency type situations in order to help us in the event that any additional money is removed from our budget.
Thank you.
Mr. Gillette.
Thank you. So I want to thank the administration for their hard work on the budget. I know this was a very challenging year, but I do have a concern, and I would be remiss if I didn't point out that in policy 0155, our board committee's bylaw, item 4 under governance committee says the governance committee will develop a tentative budget and present it to the full board for consideration. Now this would be, and I'll just say it straight out, governance committee did not meet to do this. This is the first time in my 14 years on the board where no board committee has met with administration to prepare the tentative budget. None. I think the public is owed an explanation about that. I know we met individually in committees, and I know it's a challenging year with COVID, but we have it right there in governance committee on bylaw 0155. The governance committee will develop a tentative budget and present it to the full board for its consideration. There's reasons we have a committee, and in my first years on the board, that was the finance committee, then became the operations committee. And after the 2018 budget, I believe we changed the bylaws at that time, and in 2019 and 2020, that became the obligation of the governance committee. But now we're in March 2021, and I think that's a concern. So while I appreciate the work the administration did, I think the public's owed an explanation about exactly what's happening here, where the representatives, none of the representatives met to examine the entire budget with administration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gillette, for your question, and I will try to address that, your concern. So as you and I had talked previously about bylaw 155, that was, I guess, a bylaw that I objected to in the past. And you're absolutely correct that the governance committee task is to, I guess, present a tentative budget to the board for its approval. I think in this particular year, all the board committees reviewed the tentative budget with the binders. I guess it was like 2 weeks ago in committee. And it seemed that this particular budget was quite robust and well thought out, with not many, how shall we say, controversies as in previous years. So there really wasn't anything in terms of trying, like as we did in the 2019 calendar year, that I recall that there were many staffing cuts, that there were disagreements on where those cuts should be made. And in this particular year, you know, I attended all the committee meetings, there seemed to be agreement among board members that this was a good budget. In terms of comments to the administration, I don't recall there being very many. So in that particular case, the governance committee I did not think it was necessary, although you are absolutely correct that governance committee is tasked with meeting. We are planning to meet between now and the final budget. And then in fact, actually, after the final budget is approved on April 26th, I would actually like the governance committee to review its charge of specifically bylaw 155 to remove the budget from the governance committee, its list of tasks, because as you pointed out previously, I believe that the tentative budget or the budget was in the purview of operations, which is where I think it should or would be better suited. And I think as Dr. Antunes will discuss board goals, we will be talking about committee structure. So I think that will come up quite naturally. So I wanted to thank you, Mr. Gillette, for bringing this up. You're absolutely right about that oversight. And I will open it up to any other comments from the board. Ms. Stats, please.
Yeah, I do acknowledge that the end result, or even the process, was done in a positive manner with good intent and good results. But policies are policies, and I think we should be, you know, more diligent about following them. But I do have another question. Is state aid state aid as far as being based on enrollment? That's enrollments as of what date?
They utilize our ASSA application that we provide every year. It's as of October 15th. They do utilize a 6-year rolling average when they provide our state aid. So that's a portion of what gets factored into our state aid allocation. There are other factors as well.
So do you think we'll be, this will have a significant negative effect on how much state aid we get, since our numbers went down and we'll probably go back up?
So I know for our 2021-2022 state aid numbers, while we were anticipating a very negative impact, thankfully the year that fell off this year, when we utilized our October 15, 2020 numbers, the year that fell off 6 years prior was actually very similar. So, which is why our ASSA information this year did not have such a detrimental effect on our state aid numbers. So I don't remember off the top of my head what the number for our 2022-2023 budget would fall off. So I'm not sure if that was a higher number as well. So if our enrollment goes up, if it would have a positive or negative, I would have to go back and look. But that was the factor for this year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Mr. Pulsifer, please.
Yes, going back to the committee question. while the budget, pieces of the budget were discussed in each of the committees, and I'm fortunate enough to, in this case, fortunate enough to sit on two committees, I saw two parts of the budget getting presented. I do think the point of having the governance committee, at least at the time we structured it that way, was a way to gather input from the committees and have the committee chairs represent their committees in a larger scale discussion. So while it did occur within the committee meetings, there was not a full budget review to the extent that you might have when you brought input from the education committee along with input from HR and input from operations. So I do think while we did discuss it, I think it doesn't change the need to have the collective meeting of the people representing each committee as part of that. And I real this will probably be better for another time, but just to the point of it going to operations, I think that still suffers from the same problem, that if operations is in charge of the budget, they're not getting the input from the other committees at that sort of in a role of bringing everything together with input from all committees. If you push it to operations, then HR and education don't bring their input to that final bringing together of the budget. So I do think that's an important part of the purpose, whether it stays in governance or there's some other way. There needs to be the sort of last review from the board perspective, covering input across all the committees. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pulsifer. Are there any other comments from the board before I open it up to the public? All right. Oh, Mr. Kidd.
I had a quick question. So in regards to which committee this in regards to which committee or committees will be responsible for reviewing and approving the budget to be pushed up to a full board meeting, is just the governance committee going to be voting for that, or will that be voted on today?
So tonight, Mr. Kidd, we're voting on the tentative budget. Mr. Gillette's criticism of the budget not having been reviewed in its full entirety of all of the people, so the chair people from operations, education, and HR, that each committee, so his criticism is that each committee has seen its portion of the budget. While all of us have received the binder, it was not reviewed in its entirety, is what Mr. Gillette is saying. So tonight we will be voting on the budget based on the review that you have probably most likely done with the budget binder. And we think, right. So it's just a tentative budget. And as I had mentioned earlier, that the governance committee will be meeting one more time, or will be meeting to review again and take all the inputs from the different committees. Does that answer your question, Mr. Kidd?
Yep.
Thank you. And Ms. Nurse.
I want to say this politely and respectfully, but I'm sitting here and I'm wondering, this is, I think, probably the second time that it's happened recently where there's criticism about something that wasn't done. And I guess I'm just wondering maybe if there are such strong feelings why it wasn't brought up before it got to this point. Like, I'm new to this, so I don't know all the policies or how we've done this before, but in the past, if governance had taken care of this, why weren't there questions from board at last meeting or the meeting before that as to, hey, when are we going to have this meeting? Are we going to have this meeting? It just seems to be that people are criticizing others for not doing something without being proactive and making sure our board runs smoothly and functions cohesively. So I was just curious as why we're not maybe having those conversations so we can work together.
Thank you, Ms. Nurse. Mr. Gillette.
Yes, so just real quick. Mr. Trujillo did indicate to me in a text several weeks ago that governance committee meeting would be forthcoming, and it was not. But I don't generally reveal those conversations at board meetings. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think maybe that would be, that's helpful though. I appreciate that. And maybe we just need to figure out how to make this more, again, back to open communication. If we talk about this and ask questions at board meetings ahead of time, I think we can be more, again, proactive and cohesive.
Thank you, Ms. Nurse and Mr. Gillette, for your comments.
I also
Mr.
didn't bring this on Ms. Trio tonight. Also, I did mention to Friday also to think about how to pass the tentative budget night when governance committee has not met. So I didn't surprise anybody tonight with this. If that's your thought, Ms. Nurse, or anybody else, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gillette. Mr. Pulsifer?
To answer at least my take on the timing and the context of this, Cindy, is that I would not have expected a governance committee meeting until after the individual committee meetings, which happened after the last board meeting. So there was no time at a prior point to say, hey, how come governance hasn't met? Because I wouldn't have expected them to meet yet. I would have expected them to meet after each of the individual committees. So I guess later in the week, 2 weeks ago or sometime last week, but that would have been between board meetings. So there was no opportunity to say at a board meeting or bring that up. And so there was not a time prior to the previous board meeting where I would have expected it to happen yet, but it should have happened, in my view, should have happened after the set of committee meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Pulsifer. Ms. Nurse?
Thank you very much for clarifying, because that makes complete sense now. And I think maybe the more that we talk about this, I know that we said that we were going to look into committee meetings and readjusting them around the board meetings, and talking about that come September. But if this continues to be problematic and a disconnect, we might need to address that sooner rather than later, would be my recommendation. So that way we can make sure that the questions are answered, meetings happen, conversations happen, so everybody feels fully prepared moving forward.
Thank you, Ms. Nurse. Thank you again, Mr. Gillette, for your criticism. I acknowledge that there were some shortcomings with respect to the governance committee, and we will strive to do better. I'm so sorry. So now I'd like to open it up to the public for any comments before the board votes. Ms. Salinger, yes. Ms. Salinger. Promoting to panelist, and believe
good. Yes. Okay. Amy Salinger, teacher at Otten Road School and HEA treasurer. I just had a clarifying question on the slide that said budget highlights expenditures. The third bullet down says there's an additional 4 teaching positions added. And then the 6th bullet down says additional special education positions, including 4 full-time teachers and 3 instructional assistants based on IEP mandates and district needs. Are those the same 4 positions, or is it 4 and then another 4?
2 totally different, 4 and 4, totally different positions.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other comments from the participants in the room? Seeing none, then I will turn to the Zoom room, and there's Jason. I will now promote you to panelist. And Jason, if you could state your name and the address for the record, and this is for public comments on the budget before the board votes.
Jason, if you're speaking, we cannot hear you.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
my name's Jason Albanese. I live at 120 Taylor Avenue. I don't have a comment on the agenda or the I can't even think of what I want to say. I have a comment on something else completely.
If possible, Mr. Albanese, if we could hold those comments, there will be a second public comment section, or actually an actual official public comment section prior to the board voting. If you wouldn't mind holding that.
I can hold it.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
So if there are any other comments from the public before the board votes, and I'm not seeing any in the room or in the Zoom room, so I will close the public comment for the budget and then turn it over.
Yes.
To
So what we'd
voting?
like to
Okay.
do, Ms. Trujillo, is I would like to recommend that we move up those portions of the agenda. So that would be the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the operations agenda, only certain parts of it, 11.1 through 11.8, I believe. Motion to approve the 2021-2022 tentative budget. Motion to approve travel reimbursement expenses and maximum travel. Motion to authorize the withdrawal from cap reserve and from maintenance reserve. Motion to approve the sidebar agreement with the HPSA and motion to approve the sidebar agreement with HEA. Motion to terminate participation in the Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey healthcare plan. And motion to approve participation in the New Jersey School Employees Health Benefits Plan. So 11.1 to 11.8.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Antunes. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Pulsifer, thank you. And may I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Maroon, thank you. Any further discussion? If not, Ms. Sangiuliani, may we please have a roll call?
Sure. Mr. Gillette,
Yes.
Mr. Marini,
Yes.
Ms. Maroon,
Yes.
Ms. Nurse,
Yes.
Mr. Oliver,
Yes.
Mr. Pulsifer,
Yes.
Ms. Stats,
Yes.
and Ms. Trujillo.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much, Ms. Trio. Well, what I'd like to do, if it's okay, is move on with our next
Did you
presentation.
call Benjamin Kidd?
Roll call. I apologize, Mr. Kidd.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes.
Gillette.
Thank you. I
I believe
apologize.
it wasn't called on the roll either when we began the meeting. So you can mark him present, I believe.
Yes,
Sure.
please do
Thank
that.
you.
Okay, so I'll go to the next presentation.
Actually, did Mr. Kidd vote then?
Yes,
He
he
just
voted
did.
yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, so we have another presentation, should be a quick presentation. It's just an update on the board goals. We had presented a tentative presentation a couple weeks ago. And so this is just making it official of what the board goals are for the school year. And in black, what you see is that what we looked at tentatively several weeks ago, and we've evolved that into the Hillsborough Township Board of Education will improve board governance and increase committee and board effectiveness by conducting a New Jersey School Boards Association policy wellness check and rolling out a policy revision cycle by March 2022. The action plan for that. Now, the action plan for education, there's so many different models of action that can take place. And just like we do with our teachers and our administrators, it's ever evolving. It's always being tweaked. If we need to adjust, we adjust as time goes on. We can add actions or activities, we can take them away. And some of the actions that we have for this particular goal include reaching out to school boards to determine the process for policy review, and then review the recommendations and identify those which require revision and updates for two reasons, essentially. To reflect our current practice. So are the policies indicating exactly what we're doing? And then to ensure equitable access for all students. Now, we don't know how long it's going to take school boards to do that. So that's why we're in the process of, we've already reached out to them. We're on a list next to get ready to go. We don't know how long that's going to take, and they'll be able to tell us that once they get to us. And then we want to develop a rotation schedule for policy review, much like we do with curriculum revision. For the other portion of the governance of this goal, the Hillsborough Township Board of Ed will improve board governance and increase committee and board effectiveness by conducting an investigation of the 3 master committee systems or other systems for improved effectiveness. That includes reaching out to school boards to ascertain the most appropriate board trainings for the Hillsborough Township Board of Education, developing a 3-year training cycle that best meets the current needs of the board, share the information with board members, including training dates, accountability provisions, i.e. the minimum number of trainings per year, timeframes, et cetera, that may differ for each board member. Research and investigate via school boards the 3 master committee systems or other systems for improved effectiveness, and share best practices as related to school board membership and incorporate appropriate best practices into the committee and board meeting structure and framework. Schedule and plan board retreat focusing on communication between and among board members, as well as best practices related to school board membership, and commit to maintaining timeframes outlined for those committee meetings. For goal 2, that's evolved into the Hillsborough Township Board of Education will improve communications with all stakeholders by developing a tiered multi-year communication strategy by March 2022. And in order to do that, the board is committing to reestablishing and taking a look at bringing back, if possible, the committee, the community outreach coordinator and central registrar, review and revising the job description for such, research and secure a professional service to develop and conduct a climate survey of the school community and the community at large, define and identify stakeholders to ensure that we're all talking about the same people, update the Board of Education portion of the website, host a minimum of 2 listening sessions via meet and greets with the superintendent and rotating board members, continue to investigate the feasibility and meaningfulness of the New Jersey Public School Labor Management Collaborative, reach out to township officials regarding the feasibility and willingness to establish a minimum of 2 meeting dates per year, develop a recognition program for the purpose of recognizing faculty, students, staff, and volunteers at Board of Education meetings throughout the school year. And members of the board will learn how to engage in appropriate interboard communications via New Jersey School Board's training. Now, some of the timelines that we had for that include, so we discussed it at our February 22nd meeting, the tentative board goals. Then we provided specificity this evening for the board goals. And then we've committed to progress updates almost every month until we meet the goals. And so that's where we are at this point. Now, on the board agenda, I believe it's an ops. There'll be a motion to approve these, and I just want to restate that these are things that we can always adjust and tweak. We don't have to, every adjustment we make or change we make, we don't have to reapprove them as long as the major goal stays the same. You're not approving each of the individual activities all the time. It's just the larger goal. That could evolve as time goes on. We just don't know. Mr. Trujillo, that is that particular presentation. I have one more.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Unless anybody has any questions about this.
Please go ahead with the next report.
Okay. The next brief presentation. Oh, excuse me 1 second. I just messed something up here. I apologize. I know people have been asking about the survey results. So as you are aware, the HEA conducted a survey and the district conducted a survey. And so I will let you know that the survey that the HEA conducted was, while the HEA conducted it, Mr. Goodhue did speak with Dr. Feltry about it before going out. We wanted to see if there could be some overlap between the results of what were coming in from our staff members and if we needed to adjust anything for our community survey that went out just a couple of days after this one went out. So the HEA survey went out on March 1st to all staff members. And the information that I'm sharing with you this evening came directly from Mr. Goodhue, who shared it with us. That approximately 65% of the HEA members did respond to the survey. 66 of those that responded reported that administration had shared possible plans, and 64% reported that they had not been given the opportunity to provide feedback. Now, I will say that, and Mr. Goodhue confirmed, that the survey went out the same week that faculty meetings were going to take place, and some of those discussions happened to take place during those faculty meetings. Almost 51% reported that their comfort level was a 4 or 5, which is positive, with a phase-in plan that maintained 6 feet of distancing, and approximately 63% reported discomfort with distancing of less than 6 feet. 64% reported discomfort with students eating lunches in schools, and 83% reported ventilation as an important issue. Approximately 78% reported that access to COVID testing was important to them, and 84.7% reported that the access to vaccinations were important to them. This was really valuable information for us because we've been working together to try to, with us and the county and Atlantic Health Systems and some other places, that trying to get our teachers vaccinated as quickly as possible, especially since teachers were elevated to that state. And I know that Mr. Callahan has been working with our staff to get people appointments as well. And actually some of our parents have been helping to do that as well. So we thank everybody for that. And then we did district survey data. Now this survey went out a couple days later. It went out on March 3rd. And overall, 44% of those who responded chose the virtual option and 56% chose the in-person option. This is pretty consistent with the way it's been with us from the very beginning. About 50-50, sometimes 48-52, sometimes 44-56 of the amount of people, but it's been pretty consistent. There are some districts that have 10% in person, 90% virtual, 90% virtual. Totally different landscape when we get data back like this. This is definitely telling us that people want to be in school and definitely telling us people don't want to be in school. So it's providing us some information, but certainly 50-50 is pretty big. And then we broke it down by school so that when you look at, for example, Amsterdam, 39% of students wanted to remain virtual and 61% chose the in-person option. At Auten Road, 57% chose in-person, and at HES, 59%. At the high school, 48% chose in-person, and the middle school had 56%. Sunnymead, 52% chose the in-person option, and at Triangle, 66% chose the in-person option. Wood Fern at 69% and Woods Road at 76%. And then you have the raw data there. So for example, today, Mr. Goodhue and I took a walk through one of the schools through Triangle, and we saw those 230 kids there in school today. And we saw the staff members that were there. And so it was a great feeling. I'll discuss it a little further when I go further into my superintendent's report, that we are seeing this come to fruition. Today was the first day, and we're going to keep our fingers crossed. But that was those are the larger survey results from that we did. The other thing I just wanted to share with everybody was, and this is all public, it's all on the website, but I wanted to point out our COVID-19 dashboard. It's by month, and we update it every day. Now this data that you're looking at today was as of Friday. We did not update it. I mean, it was updated on the dashboard today, but the presentation was not updated today. So, and I want to remind everybody that these numbers include hybrid students and any students who may be virtual, but that participate in extracurricular or athletic activities. And it does also include staff members. Okay, so since we've been doing this year to date, we're at 195 people. And again, this is all on our website, so you can certainly take a look at that. And then, I just thank you. I wanted to make sure that we got out some of this data because people have been asking for it. And while I've been able to share some of that with the board in committees, I wanted to publicly, share that with everybody. Those are the presentations, but I do have some other good news, Mrs. Trujillo. Okay. Once again, as we struggle to regain normalcy in our lives, I find myself writing to you in response to the biased and hate-filled actions against the Asian American Pacific Islander community. As I stated in June, Hillsborough Township Public Schools consistently teach and reinforce that as a community, our strength lies in our differences. Differences are to be celebrated, and that above all, respect for others is essential. We as a school district have policies that denounce acts of harassment, intimidation, and bullying that would leave any member of our community feeling disrespected, unsafe, or marginalized. We are committed to educating our students' minds and hearts. We recognize that our community shares in the suffering that is being felt both nationally and locally, and we advocate for equity, inclusion, and belonging, and reassert that it is our moral imperative to speak out against racism and hatred in all forms and advocate for the tenets of social justice. We stand in support of our Asian American Pacific Islander community. Our school counselors do remain ready to offer support to anyone struggling as a result of these events, so please do not hesitate to reach out. I would also like to take a moment to recognize and congratulate the newly appointed Executive Director of the New Jersey Principals and Supervisors Association. Our very own Ms. Karen Bingert, our high school principal, will be retiring July 1st and taking on this new role. The NJPSA is dedicated to the promotion of educational excellence with New Jersey school leaders. Numerous services are provided to active members and include leadership programs and professional learning through its professional learning division, which is the Foundation for Educational Administration. Congratulations and a big shout out to Ms. Bingert on this well-deserved appointment. And we'll have some tough shoes to fill, but we'll get started on that pretty quickly. It's my pleasure to share some outstanding accomplishments from many of our students in the area of fine and performing arts. Congratulations to Sabrina Schubert, a high school senior who was adjudicated by the Eastern Region National Association of Teachers of Singing, who was placed in the top 6 singers in her voice range. The Eastern region consists of Delaware, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Quebec. Sabrina will be recognized in an award ceremony on March 14th, so she was recognized. Congratulations, Sabrina. 7 high school students were selected to present their work at this year's Phillips Mill Art Show. Julia Zhang, Cynthia Zhang, Carolyn Toledo, Jeffrey Ye, Shawnee Vasquez, Camden Schreiner, and Megna Barth. Special kudos to Julia Zhang, who won first place in the painting category. Congratulations to all of our students. We're proud of your hard work. The following Hillsborough High School art students recently received recognition in the 2021 Scholastic Art and Writing Awards presented by Apple Farms Arts and Music Campus. Jeffrey Yee won the Silver Key Award in Painting. Cynthia Zhang, honorable mention in Drawing and Illustration. Julia Zhang, the Gold Key Award in Painting. And Samay Dwan, who earned an honorable mention in her graphic arts work, The Yonder Mountain, and a Silver Key Award in her digital artwork, Creative Genius. The students' work was recognized by a panel of creative professionals as outstanding among their peers. Congratulations on this remarkable achievement. It truly was a beautiful day in our elementary schools as the sound of teachers teaching and students laughing and learning filled our halls. On a brief tour, we, Mr. Goodhue and myself, along with the building principal, had the opportunity to witness the joy and excitement on the faces and in the actions of our students and staff. What a wonderful, wonderful feeling. However, as we continue to welcome students back to school, it remains our priority to maintain a healthy and safe learning and working environment for our students and staff. However, this will be impossible if we do not have the assistance of every single person in the community. There are schools and districts across the state that have had to either delay reopening and or close shortly after reopening due to increased outbreaks among students as a result of parties, sleepovers, gatherings, etc., and the unwillingness to cooperate in contact tracing efforts in those communities. We certainly do not want this to be the case in Hillsborough. Therefore, please help us keep our schools open as we continue to welcome more students into our buildings by making those difficult decisions, remaining vigilant in mitigation strategies, and making choices that will protect Hillsborough as a community. Thank you, Ms. Trujillo. That concludes the superintendent's report for today.
Thank you very much. I'd like to move on next to committee reports. And before we have the board members do the committee reports, I'd like to welcome Ms. Christina Smith from the HEA Pride to report on postcards for kids. So let me see, Christina, I will promote you to panelist.
You're good?
Yes, whenever you're ready.
Okay, good evening. I'm Christina Smith, HEA's second Vice President and Pride Chair. I have an exciting announcement about our Postcards for Kids project. But first, I'd like to give a little background about the project for new listeners that are tuning in. A few months ago, the HEA Pride Committee launched a new community project called Postcards for Kids. This project was funded by a grant from the New Jersey Education Association and unites members of our community under the Borough Pride banner. It was created with the goal of bringing our community together and sending some extra support to our students as they navigate these difficult times. Close to 200 student artists from Lawton Road, the middle school, and the high school submitted artwork for the contest, focusing on the theme of "We are all in this together." The artwork was reviewed by a panel of stakeholders, and 3 winners were selected. Their artwork was transformed into 1,500 postcards that have been made available to elementary staff to send an uplifting message to a student or celebrate their successes during such a challenging time. The winners were Akshaya Suresh Kumar, Jeremy Soberray, and Jessica Herman. The Pride Committee found this message of hope inspiring and wanted to spread it to the community and beyond. I'm very excited to announce that the Pride Committee has secured a billboard on Route 206 near Campaign Road to display one of the winners' artwork. After great deliberation, the Pride Committee has chosen Jessica Herman's postcard design to be made into a billboard. Her beautiful design will be on display from about May 10th through June 6th for all passerby to behold. Congratulations to Jessica Herman. We can't wait to see your artwork turned into a magnificent billboard. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. What a wonderful surprise. Thank you. I'd like to now turn it to Mr. Gillette to give the Operations Committee minutes and any liaison reports. Thank you.
Thank you. Operations Committee met on March 9th. We took a look at the board budget survey results. Mr. Mahmood went over the budget binders with us. I spoke at the last meeting about an item proposed for this year's budget having to do with 54 passenger buses, acquiring some new ones. After some discussion with Ms. Bennett, our transportation supervisor, we settled on acquiring 4 new 54 passenger buses for the 2021-22 school year. We had a discussion about fundraising groups that fundraise on behalf of students and student activities. And I'm making this really brief because I was so long last time. We also had an update on the HES playground. And finally, I think that there's some good news that the contractor and the manufacturer got together and figured out where they had some miscommunication. And if all goes well, it looks like no additional work would need to be done and the playground would be operational soon. That's all we had time for. Thank you. Oh, also, Ms. Trio asked me if I had anything from as Township Liaison. Only one thing recently. This is Hillsborough's 250th anniversary year. The Township Committee is planning celebration on June 26th as part of the fireworks day that they usually have. And there may be some activities prior to that during this interim period for school children, some contests or some other things. I haven't settled on it yet, but when I know about that, I'll let Dr. Tunis or anybody know that needs to know about anything that might be an opportunity for kids to participate. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gillette. Ms. Maroon, if you would give the Education Committee report. Thank you.
Sure. I'll try to be as brief as possible as well. The Education Committee met on March 10th. We had a long list of things on our agenda, but we had to roll a lot over due to time constraints. But again, we first discussed the budget survey results, which were discussed tonight, and also the budget, the tentative budget, just as Mr. Gillette had said. We also went through a presentation
regarding advanced math and advanced literacy at ARIS and concerns regarding tracking. And we discussed the data and we listened to Mr. Carey, Ms. Cooper, and Ms. Knurr. And we listened to their presentation about the detracking plan and a shift of resources that is already in place to create a response to intervention model that will support all students. And this bridges some equity issues, which is one of the best practices in education that's actually already happening right now. So that's something that we discussed. And we also discussed the graduation and senior gatherings, or prom. I don't want to discuss too much because I know Ms. Binger did release information already. So, and I bet you her information is probably already better updated than what we had already discussed. So, but it is in talks and there is plans. So I'm hoping that everybody is going on board and giving their feedback with all of that is going on. That's about all we got to.
Thank you, Ms. Maroon. If I could have Mr. Oliver with the Human Resources Committee minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Trujillo. We also met on March 9th. Ms. San Giuliano, it's a tough one to say, especially with a mask on. And Iman presented the budget to us, the budget survey results. Again, I reiterate everyone else's comments. I think it's a great budget. Reduction with state aid, we're still able to add some teacher positions. We also discussed transitioning into the state employee health benefits plan. We discussed projected enrollment, and we had a lengthy discussion regarding the review and discussion of hiring and evaluating coaches. We are listening to the community. We are looking into that. We'll continue to look into it. We tabled it for next meeting, and we'll continue to come up with ideas how we can make that process better, and to just include some of the comments from the public and making that a little bit better process. We discussed the settlement agreement with the HEA, and that was about it.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. Ms. Stats, if you would do the Communication Committee minutes and any liaison reports.
Thank you, Ms. Trujillo. The Communications Committee met on March 10th. We discussed the possibility of adding a community outreach / central registrar position as one of our two goals, communication, which involves improving communication. This would definitely address that. One of our concerns was because the proposed position would also involve being a central registrar. We were worried that they would be pulled away from addressing their responsibilities about communications, but Dr. Antunes assured us that they will seek a candidate who has a strong communications background. So just that alone would hopefully result in them emphasizing communications. We also discussed the possibility of getting it set up ahead of time, that we would meet monthly, and talked about the board retreat and maybe a meeting earlier in June. And Dr. Antunes shared the communications that have been going on regarding the continuing return to school plan. And that she has given us an update as far as that has already been updated since we met a couple weeks ago. We also, in addition to what was in we also discussed the goal of communications in some detail. We were talking about maybe have a town hall or a special kind of board meeting. Even maybe something like a fireside chat at a board meeting where there'd be a given topic and community members could submit questions ahead of time. And then those questions, of course, would be addressed at that point. And also we talked about maybe continuing to investigate the feasibility of the New Jersey Public School Labor Management Collaborative and reaching out to township officials and improving communications among board members, as well as town halls and a public advisory committee. So that's my report for communications. As far as the Municipal Alliance, a couple things I want to inform everyone about or remind them. This Wednesday, March 24th, there will be a virtual screening of a documentary called Like, and that will be addressing the impact of social media and the effect of technology on the brain. And there was an email sent out on March 9th. So if you refer to that email, you can find more information about it, as well as how to register. And just another reminder that there will be a talent show. We're all in this together on April 23rd and 24th. That will be a fundraiser. And we are now taking submissions of videos of all kinds of talent from any age. And the deadline for submitting those videos is this Friday, March 26th. And there was an email sent out March 4th. So there are links there for additional information and how to submit your video. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stats. Are there any questions on the committee reports? Ms. Nurse.
I just had a question for Education Committee. When you were talking about specific to ARIS and I think you said the advanced classes, if you can just give a little bit more information about that. And also when you were talking about response to intervention, was that in regard just to ARIS or district-wide?
So we listened to a presentation specific for ARIS, just certain, the way that they have been tracking in the certain grades. It's all listed, and let me see if I can get it. They basically just went through a presentation of something that is very preliminary in the planning process, that it was just a presentation, basically, giving us the information of things that they were looking at, the data that they had researched, and what it supported, and then they just presented a plan to see basically what is already taking place, just kind of shifting it to what the needs are at this moment. I don't want to speak too much for it because it was their presentation, and I can reach out to them, and I don't know if Dr. Antunes, if you want to speak to this at some point for.
Sure. It's very, very preliminary, Ms. Nurse. So if there's something we could talk to you offline about this, but in terms of RTI, that's district-wide. That's just not. So we've got that in place, and improving all the time. The specific situation with detracking and ARIS, we can talk about more in depth at a later date. But because it's so preliminary, there's no, we don't want to speak before it's ready to be spoken about. Thank you.
Ms. Stats.
Regarding the detracking program, I am very pleased that they are addressing the issue of inequities, but I still have concerns about it. There will still be grouping placed within the classroom, but at least since it's taking place within each classroom, hopefully there will be more fluidity, so that someone won't be stuck in one particular group. But I'm also concerned that there was no collaboration with the teachers in creating this, and I was told that they had not been informed of it yet. Again,
Mrs. Stats, as this was very preliminary, we needed to make the Education Committee aware of it before Dr. Felty took it to the next steps. So I think she explained what those next steps are, and that's where we'll go with it.
Are there any other questions from board members on the committee reports? Seeing none. Oh, Mr. Kidd.
Mine actually also has to do with stuff we're voting on today, and its relation to the committee report. Would it be a good idea to ask that question now?
Sure. What's the question?
In regards to what Mr. Oliver was talking about regarding athletics and, keeping up with community input on that and making sure that everything's being properly managed. I saw that we were voting on like approving coaches and some other stuff today. I wanted to make sure there wasn't overlap between that and what's being discussed in the committee, so we're not voting on something before it gets properly discussed.
So Mr. Kidd, I believe that these coach appointments are for the spring program that we really don't want to hold up. I think what Mr. Oliver was referring to was with respect to the process that we will continue, the HR committee will continue to evaluate the process to try and improve it based on board member input as well as what we're hearing from the community. So I do not think that it should impact tonight's vote.
Thank you for the clarification.
Sure. Are there any other questions from board members? Seeing none, then I'd like to move on to approval of the March 8th, 2021 regular public meeting minutes. If I could get a motion in a second.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Nurse.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Okay, so now we are up to section 8, which is the comments from the board and public. And are there any comments from the board before I open it up to the public on tonight's action agenda? All right, so then I'm going to open it up to the public. And before I do that, I will read this preface. So we very much welcome input from the public. During board meetings, there will be 2 30-minute periods of time that the meeting will be open for public comment, where members of the public are invited to comment, which they may do so via Zoom, in person if they are attending in person, or via written comments sent via letter or email. During the first public comment period, members of the public may comment about any item that is listed on tonight's agenda before the board votes. If time remains in this public comment period, members of the public may comment on any school or school district issue that a member of the public feels may be of concern to the residents of the school district as per bylaw 167. Before you state your question or comment, you'll be asked to provide your name and address. Please understand that our public forums are not structured as question and answer sessions, but rather are offered as opportunities to share your thoughts with the board. In instances where the board believes there is a misunderstanding or inaccuracy, the board president or superintendent will address the comment. There may be times when a member of the public makes a comment or asks a question about personnel or hiring decisions. Please note that the Open Public Meetings Act and the privacy rights of public employees encompassed therein do not permit the board to discuss personnel issues in public session. Before I open it to the public, Ms. Sangiuliano, were there any comments written by letter or email?
We did receive one via email from Lauren Albee. We received this on Friday, March 19th. She said, "Good evening. I would like to hear the thoughts of administration and the Board of Education in regards to the recent directive from Governor Murphy. Governor Murphy's directive is as follows, copied from the Hillsborough patch. But one key area of New Jersey has yet to see major reopening progress, schools. As he faces mounting pressure to get children back in the classroom, Murphy insisted that schools open now, citing recent funding from the American Rescue Plan at a Wednesday news conference. Passed by Congress and signed by President Joe Biden, the package provides nearly $2.8 billion to New Jersey schools. Much of this funding is meant to help schools reopen and combat the learning loss we know has occurred," he said. 1, how much money is Hillsborough receiving? How do you plan to use those funds to combat the learning loss? What barriers do you still see for us to get back to more hours in school? Please note the following. A normal week is for a high school student is 240 minutes per class period. Currently, they receive 172 minutes. That averages out to 680 minutes lost per class subject per marking period. Thank you for your time. Lauren Albee.
Thank you, Ms. Sangiuliano. I will now turn it to the members of the public who are in the room tonight. If there are any questions or comments, not questions, sorry, public comment. No? Okay. So now I'll turn it over to the Zoom room, and I saw Ms. Mailer, so I will elevate you to panelist. Good evening, Ms. Mailer, whenever you're ready.
Good evening. Anna Mailer, 11 Hunt Club Road. Good evening, Dr. Antunes, Dr. Feltry, and members of the Hillsborough Township Board of Education. I'm very pleased this evening to hear Dr. Antunes publicly take a stand in support of the Asian American community in light of the recent increase in bias and hate crimes stemming from racism. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Such public acknowledgement sends a powerful message to all of our students and families that we stand in solidarity as a community where everyone deserves to feel safe, respected, and a sense of belonging. One statement is a hopeful step. However, it is not enough. 8 weeks ago, on January 25th, I spoke to you on the topic of racial healing as it pertained to national events, specifically the uprising in the Capitol, and to district goals. That same evening, Dr. Trabulski, the principal at the middle school, read a letter from Borough Cares, Hillsborough's Coalition for Anti-Racist and Equitable Schools, which asked that the board bring together a diverse group of stakeholders to review and advance a comprehensive plan for our district to focus on racial equity in educational programs and services. We outlined 8 recommendations to promote greater inclusivity and racial equity for the board to consider when developing the district goals and budget for this year. I also sent a follow-up letter offering to do a presentation on dismantling racism to the board. After being thanked for our input, 8 weeks of silence have passed. The district goals have been presented this evening. I'm here not only as a member of Borough Cares, but as a member of this community to publicly ask why Hillsborough is not actively promoting equity and inclusivity as district goals. Before I conclude, I must give a shout out to my students in HMS Cares, which is the student counterpart of Borough Cares. We have been meeting weekly, having insightful and deep conversations on the topic of equity, racism, microaggressions, implicit bias, cultural appropriation, and more. The students drive the agenda and want to process current events as well as issues within the school. They've also helped to create a hallway of healing in the HMS Commons, and I invite you to visit in person or virtually on the HMS website. I could not be more proud of these students, and I'm delighted that several of them are planning to speak this evening. They inspire me every day. They are not silent on things that matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mailer. I see Mr. Albanese, which I will promote to panelists now. Good evening, Mr. Albanese, whenever you're ready.
Good evening. I know that some of my questions aren't going to be answered, and I understand that these are just something that people, or some issues that people can think about for the next meeting. Our school district is failing the taxpayers. I've written 7 emails over the last year and 2 were answered by the superintendent. Her standard response email that says that she may or may not get back to anyone who emails her. This is unacceptable. Who is the superintendent accountable to? She's a public official and needs to respond to all taxpayers. Last meeting, board member Marini did ask about policies and was looking for accountability like the rest of our town. Why do we continue to have a lack of transparency and communication, which was one of the main topics at the last meeting? Why is it that teachers can teach from their home and get paid, but if a hybrid child is sick, they are marked absent, even if hybrid or even if do virtual? Is this a double standard? Our kids are suffering. Our children are at least a year behind in learning. Some of the most intelligent children are even lacking in emotional, social, and educational aspects. Why did it take so long to roll out a reentry plan, which is absolutely devastating to our kids? Once again, why is the individual decision made by Ms. Antunes? How can the community have no voice except for a survey? Why are there other schools in Somerset County going to school 5 days a week full time? The words of lack of confidence and leadership have been communicated for months, and we continue to sing the praises of Ms. Antunes. What needs to be done to focus on the children, their failed education, and mental health? All I heard over the last few board meetings is collaboration. In what instance do employees make managerial decisions or participate in such decisions? You allow the union president to bully his teachers, and they side with him out of fear. The board and Ms. Antunes also never hold him accountable for his actions. Are you investigating the blue flu that he led 3 times this year? Why are we not investigating teachers that participated in this? Why are they not being held accountable? Why is he allowed to do union work all day long and not teach kids like 9% of school union presidents? Why is this board not pulling that away from him right now? Renegotiate this now and take back our schools. Also, why can't the board endorse candidates for union president like he did for board members? I bet we have more honest individuals that can serve as union president. Why doesn't the board form a selection committee for a union president that will support both the teachers and the administration? Do not let him push his own agenda. Be proactive, not reactive. Our children are the stakeholders in this district. Every one of you needs to know that and accept this. They are the ones suffering, and you are just hiding behind a desk making excuses. I will not stop fighting for them or the taxpayers, as we are the pillars of this community. On behalf of the 7,000 plus kids, I urge the board to address these issues and stop being fooled by a failing superintendent and stop being bullied by the union president.
Thank you, Mr. Albanese, for your comments.
Thank you.
I'd like to now recognize Heather Larico. I'll promote you to panelist. Ms. Larico, whenever you're ready.
Okay, there we go. All right, thank you. I was heartened to hear Dr. Antunes restate the Hillsborough Township School District support for marginalized communities during her remarks today. To that end, I would like to bring the Board of Education's attention to recent legislation proposed in the New Jersey Senate. On March 11th, New Jersey State Senator Testa introduced S3540 in the New Jersey Senate. This bill seeks to prohibit New Jersey transgender students from participation in school-sanctioned sports. This transphobic legislation is based on pseudoscience and was crafted by the Alliance Defending Freedom. The ADF is recognized as an anti-LGBTQ hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. I strongly urge the Board of Education to support the NJSIAA's leadership, which was the first state athletics body in the nation to permit transgender athletes to participate in sports based on their gender identity over a decade ago. This bill is currently in the Senate Education Committee. Now is time for the board to take a stand and make a statement to protect the rights of Hillsborough's transgender youth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Larico, for your comments. I'd like to recognize Teresa Alex. I will promote you now to panelist.
Hi, I'm Teresa Alex. I reside on 120 Sandmetz Road. Just as a heads up, after I finish speaking, to limit confusion, if you, after I finish speaking, could pull up Sanjay Nabata, that would be awesome. So first off, good evening, everyone. We really appreciate the time that you have taken to listen to our concerns and our ideas. We are representatives from Hillsborough Middle School Club, HMS Cares. My name is Teresa Alex, and I happen to be an immigrant. I have faced lots of prejudice and bias. When people hear this word in 2021, a lot of unnecessary thoughts come to mind. I have personally experienced or noticed other children being targeted or just being made fun of just because of where they come from. Most times I'm reluctant to tell people where I come from because of the assumption that I am guilty of something. HMS Cares is a club that stands against issues of racial injustice, unconscious bias and fears, and many other stereotypes. Our club has created a safe space for students and peers to express their feelings and thoughts on all of these topics. There's a vast misrepresentation that people of color face in society. Although you have all done an admirable job educating our peers and communities so far, there's still so much that needs to be accomplished. We as students of Hillsborough Middle School see a need for change. Here are some testimonies from our fellow students and teachers that demonstrate the need for change. A student says, in 6th grade, my friend got called the N-word in the school by a white person about 40 times repeatedly over and over again. I had to tell him to stop, but he didn't. The police were called and all the guy got was 3 days of lunch detention. Another testimony. I've I've also been forced or peer pressured to say my sexuality. Because of my personality and things, I have friendship with girls, but it makes me quote unquote gay. This has been happening for 3 years now and maybe even more. From there on, I've also been called different kinds of derogatory terms, such as the R slur, F slur, and many other slurs. Here's testimony from our teacher. My student, who is black, came into my classroom and told me that during lunch, a group of white students were asking him if he still picked cotton. He was obviously very upset and hurt by this. I reported to administration.
Alex, you muted yourself, so we can't hear you if you're still talking. There you go. Okay.
Oh, no. Could you promote Sanjana Bhatta?
Yes, thank you. Whenever you're ready.
Hi, my name is Sanjana Bhatta, and I live on 39 Tippett Street. I'm a person of color. I come from an Indian background. I'm a person of color, and I come from an Indian background. Because of these characteristics, I've often been misjudged or stereotyped into one category of people. I'm expected to be at the top of my class and in academics and in any area of studying, but I'm so much more than that. I love studying, but I also love sports, music, fighting for equality, and being a leader. An example is how whenever I go to soccer practice, I get sideways glances from people just because I'm Indian. Just because I've been in the societal category of being a nerd, someone who doesn't have a social life and only loves academics. But that's not me. For so long, these unjust misinterpretations have been made about every group of people, and they need to stop. Some changes that the township could make includes educating students about microaggressions from an early age, creating an environment for open and free discussion, and providing inclusion when teaching and creating the curriculum. In specifics, microaggressions are stereotypes and misinterpretations based on groups of people. They can be very negatively impactful and spread feelings of discomfort or hurt across peers. Learning about microaggressions could help spread awareness about what or what not to say, and also could help students stand up for themselves and their fellow classmates. These topics absolutely need to be taught earlier in school life so we can improve all of the cases of racial inequality. We also need inclusion while teaching and creating the curriculum because we need to represent and support every single student in a classroom. Lastly, we need to create an open environment for discussion on racial inequality and stereotypes in general, because like many of my peers, mentors, and teachers say, you need to get uncomfortable in order to instill change. Can you please raise Aaliyah Merchant as a panelist?
Give me one moment. All right. Whenever you're ready.
Hi, my name is Aaliyah Merchant and I live on 20 Miller Drive, Hillsborough, New Jersey. In early 2020, I was walking through the halls in a hurry and accidentally bumped into another student. With my headscarf on, the student could obviously tell I am a Muslim. He yelled a string of profanities before calling me a terrorist. In conclusion, the importance of education is immense because often the lack of education is what leads to these comments of stereotypes and other forms of discrimination. It is crucial to educate younger students in order to create a nurturing community, and it is a requisite for an equal future. Specifically, children need to be educated on offensive phrases and remarks to ensure they will feel comfortable in their environment, because that is currently not the case. Children should not be fighting to be accepted, and this is a step towards awareness. This can be a more inclusive and equal start for the district. Thank you for listening to our presentation. We hope you know that many students are counting on you all to make some change. We cannot stay silent any longer. We will also send a detailed letter in the coming days with specifics on what to add to the curriculum. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your public comment. Are there any other comments from participants in the Zoom? All right, I see somebody named L. I will promote you to panelist.
Oh, sorry. There's the video. Hi. Those last students, very impressive. I hope that you take to heart what they've said and can add to their add to the curriculum what they suggest. I think whatever they're going to say is going to be brilliant. I wasn't going to speak today, and I wasn't going to speak about that. I was going to speak about something that was talked about earlier in the meeting regarding the detracking. And some of these might sound like questions, but they're also things just to consider. So I was wondering, for one, if the presentation that was mentioned could be made available to the public. I was also wondering, will the public be allowed to learn how many levels a teacher will be responsible for teaching in a single classroom? Right now, it seems that teachers in the elementary schools may have up to 4 levels. And I believe that elementary students who are struggling more are given different types of help, which is excellent and as is needed. And I think that's, from what I can tell, that's doing the district is doing a very good job with that. I was wondering, from what I see, I'm not sure that higher ability students are always given the same help and adequate challenges that would help further them along. And I've been meaning to mention this to the board and also provide budget input, but I reached out to my principals and others, and I just sent a note with these similar comments because I know this was mentioned, I believe, earlier in the year by the board, and I hadn't heard anything about what was happening with the tracking in ARIS. And so I just sent Ms. Nur an email about this. But you can look forward to hopefully soon receiving my input on the budget about the communications position, as well as ideas on what you can do to challenge higher ability students. Thank you for your time. And Dr. Antunes, not Ms. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Gabriel. Are there any other? Ms. Salinger, give me one moment. Whenever you're ready, Ms. Salinger.
Okay. Hi, Amy Salinger, teacher at Otten Road and HEA treasurer. I just wanted to make a comment to clarify a comment that was made earlier. Just want to point out that the HEA is a legally formed and operating labor union, and we are accredited under NJAA and NEA. We have our own set of constitution and bylaws which govern how we elect our officers, and we take pride in our adherence to them. The Board of Ed does not participate in our elections, and as a point of clarification, our current president is serving in his 4th term. To become an officer, a petition must be submitted, and an election is held when there are multiple candidates. For the past 3 elections, Mr. Goodhue has run unopposed and has been elected by acclamation. In regards to collaboration, I have said this publicly before, but I think it's worth reiterating tonight. In my view, collaboration does not mean that the HEA gets what they want. It simply means that we're working together towards a common goal, and I'm happy to have the lines of communication currently open with the Board of Ed and Dr. Antunes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Salinger, for your comments. And Mr. Goodhue, let me promote you to panelist. And whenever you're ready, Mr. Goodhue.
Thank you. Henry Goodhue, Hillsborough Education Association. I would just like to take a few moments to clarify a few points. But before doing so, would just like to reiterate what one of the previous speakers had said and give credit to the students who spoke tonight. Public speaking is not something that is easy to do, and certainly not when it evokes certain memories that may be painful to share. And they did so, well beyond their years. So I certainly salute them for doing that. With regards to my position as an elected official of the Hillsborough Education Association, I take that incredibly seriously. I serve in this role, as Ms. Salinger noted, as an advocate for our members. We have close to 1,050 members right now, all inclusive, working all hours of the day and some of them working 12 months out of the year. So it is a full-time position that I'm in. It's also a tax-neutral position that I'm in. So the association reimburses the district for the costs of my position. As Ms. Salinger noted, there are certain provisions that would prevent the district from doing certain things, like involving themselves in elections. The WDEA, or the Workplace Democracy Enhancement Act, probably being the most prominent of those in New Jersey. But more importantly, I think it's important to understand perhaps some of the things that we do. And as Ms. Salinger said, we're having a lot more communication, we're having a lot more collaboration, and I think that's showing in the district moving forward, that we're all playing a role in that. But outside of that, through this position, what it allows is for me to be available to the administration at all hours of the day, and they can attest to that. And it also allows for other things to take place, like being members of liaison committees with the Township Committee, serving on the Municipal Alliance to support our students as we get them resources to battle substance abuse, to make sure that mental health is taken care of. And one of the things I'm proudest of is our role supporting those either through people power or through financial power, that we're able to bring grant money to the district, tens of thousands of dollars of grant money to support local initiatives, whether that be our food bank, whether that be programs for our students, and a million other things that we're very proud of. Also, one of the roles that I've taken very seriously over the last few years is one of lobbying on behalf of the district, in speaking with local legislators and legislators in Trenton, going down through the access that I'm given through my position and through my work with the NJA to speak on behalf of our students and on behalf of our members, and try to protect funding for our members and work to make sure that our students have the best possible education. And in years past, I've worked with the administration to do that. And I would love to do that again, because we have a hard fight in front of us, and we've seen the payoff of collaboration. And I think that we can continue doing that. So I just wanted to take a moment to express that to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goodhue, for your comments. And seeing no other comments in the Zoom room or in the participants here, then I will now close public comments and turn it over to the board if there are any additional comments before we vote on tonight's agenda. Ms. Stacks, please.
I too am very much impressed by the comments that students from the middle school made. They were very well spoken, and it also saddens me the experiences that they talked about. What I find disheartening is that there are people that still deny that racism is a problem. Hopefully, they will have their hearts and minds opened to realizing that it is still a true problem. And also that we have not created district goals yet, not that I'm aware of. Today we talked about board goals, and the first one in the reviewing of the policies that will be addressing the issue of equity. But again, I want to thank the students for their eloquent commentary. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stats. Are there any other comments from the board? All right, seeing none, then I will turn it over back to Dr. Antunes for the action agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Trio. The superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the Education Committee agenda as follows. 9.1, motion to submit the application for a Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, Elementary and Secondary Schools Emergency Relief Fund 2, that's the ESSA, and motion to revise staff being paid by the FY 2021 ESEA Title I funds. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Stats. Thank you, Ms. Maroon. Any discussion? Seeing none, if we could have a roll call, Ms. Sangiuliano.
Sure, Mr. Gillette,
Yes.
Mr. Kidd,
Yes.
Mr. Marini,
Yes.
Ms. Maroon,
Yes.
Ms. Nurse,
Yes.
Mr. Oliver,
Yes.
Mr. Pulsifer,
Yes.
Ms. Stats,
Yes.
and Ms. Trujillo.
Yes.
Motion passes.
The superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the human resources agenda as follows. Motion to approve retirements and resignations, and I'd like to just point out Jane Biago, media specialist at Aunton Road, who's retiring after 22 years of service. Ms. Karen Bingert, principal of Hillsborough High School, retiring after 22 years also. Valerie Newman, school nurse at Aunton Road, after 25 years of service to our students. Elsa, also known as Connie Olson, media specialist at the high school, 16 years of service. Nancy Patrick, our grade 6 social studies reach teacher, 32 years of service to our students and staff. Michelle Robertson, teacher of chemistry at Hillsborough High School, 32 years of service. Angelic Torrey, teacher of math at the middle school, 18 years. And Maureen Uniskevich, secretary for the counseling department at the high school, 27 years. Also, I'd like to approve, motion to approve leaves of absence as listed, appointments for the 2020-2021 school year. Motion to approve appointments for 21-22. Motion to approve spring coaches as outlined, as well as summer enrichment program coordinators. Motion to approve mentor and buddy as listed. Approve extra coverage as outlined, and motion to approve the settlement agreement between the Hillsborough Board of Education and Hillsborough Education Association.
Thank you, Dr. Antunes. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Kidd.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Marini. Is there any discussion? Mr. Pulsifer and then Ms. Stats.
Thank you. I just want to take a moment. As over the years I've been on the board since the early 2000s, the principal of the high school often has a cause or need to interact with the board more than many other staff members do. And I just want to say that in all my years of working with Ms. Bingert and also negotiating on the other side of the table with Ms. Bingert, she has always been a consummate professional, and she has been a great value to this district for quite a few years now. And I believe we are really going to miss her input, and most importantly, her dedication to the students and her Raiders, as she will often refer to them. She has always been very dedicated to watching over and taking care of her students, and I think that will be missed. But I do wish her the best as she leaves us, but she will definitely be missed.
Thank you, Mr. Pulsifer. Ms. Stats?
I too want to congratulate and thank Ms. Binger for what she's done as principal for Hillsborough High School. I was a teacher there for some of those years, so I appreciate all that she has done for Hillsborough High School students. And also, I'd like to congratulate and thank Mrs. Uniskevich, also known as Mrs. U, for all that she has done for so many people. Her many years as secretary. I've always thought that secretaries pretty much, thank God for them, the schools would fall apart without them, and also custodians and maintenance. But thank you, Maureen, Mrs. Yu, for all that you've done on behalf of all of the students at Hillsborough High School.
Thank you, Ms. Stats. Are there any other board comments? Seeing none, Ms. Sangiuliano, if we could have a roll call, please. Thank you.
Sure. Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Mr. Kidd?
Yes.
Mr. Marini?
Yes.
Ms. Maroon?
Yes.
Ms. Nurse?
Yes.
Mr. Oliver?
Yes.
Mr. Pulsifer?
Yes.
Ms. Stats?
Yes.
And Ms. Trujillo?
Yes.
Motion passes.
The superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the operations agenda as follows. We've already approved 11.1 to 11.8, so we're going to do 11.9 through 11.12. So 11.9, motion to approve the monthly financials, motion to approve the monthly bills, motion to approve a joint transportation agreement for the 2020-2021 school year, and motion to approve the 2020-2021 board goals.
Thank you, Dr. Antunes. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Moran.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Nurse. Any discussion? Mr. Gillette?
Yes, I didn't want to pile on before, but I'll point out now that policy 0155, the bylaws of the committees, also charges the governance committee with developing the board goals, the annual board goals, and that didn't happen this year. So that's all I had for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gillette. Looks like I need to reread the board goals. I mean, sorry, the policy 155 before the next board meeting. Are there any other comments from the board before we vote? Mr. Marini? No? Okay. Seeing none, if we could have a roll call, Ms. Sangiuliano.
Sure. Mr. Gillette,
Yes.
Mr. Kidd,
Yes.
Mr. Marini,
Yes.
Ms. Maroon,
Yes.
Ms. Nurse,
Yes.
Mr. Oliver,
Yes.
Mr. Pulsifer,
Yes.
Ms. Stats,
Yes.
and Ms. Trujillo.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to open it back up to the board for any comments on any topic. Seeing none, then I'd like to open it back up to the public. And shall I read this again? Or can we?
No, I think you read it before, so it's
great.
still
Thank you.
applicable.
Okay, so referring back to the previous comments for the public, I'd like to now open it back up to the public for any comments. Seeing none in the room, I will open it up to the participants online. And seeing none, I will now close public comments and note that there is an informational item and then take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Stats. And Mr. Pulsifer, the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.